Good morning. I'm making strawberry preserves this morning. Now normally I make strawberry jam, and I did make a couple of batches earlier this week. But today I'm making preserves, and it's a little bit different because I'm not using fruit pectin. I'll just cook the strawberries down a little bit lower and then process them in a boiling water bath so that they can be stored for a long time until I'm ready to use them or gift them. So right now I'm in the process of washing my jars and lids and rings. So I have my pan of hot soapy water, and I'm washing my jars. Now, even though these jars are new and they have the plastic on them, they still should be washed. And check the rims, make sure there's no cracks or chips on the jars. The same thing with the lids and the rings. I'm washing those as well. Now that my jars are washed, I'm going to put them into a pot on the stove and sterilize them. So here, as you can see, I have my boiling water bath pot back here, and I'm turning the stove on high, and also on the pot in the front that's got a small amount of water in it that's going to sterilize my jars. I don't have a rack for the jars to sit in while they're being sterilized, so I don't want them to sit right on the bottom of the pan. So I'm using some previously used jar lids just so they're not sitting on the bottom of the pot for the jars to sit in. So I'm going to add my jars. And this won't sterilize them all at one time. I could use the dishwasher for this, but I usually don't. So I'll sterilize them in 2 batches. So my jars are starting the sterilization process, and I have my boiling water bath on. And over here I have my jam pot. My new Maslin jam pot ready for the strawberries to go in. And on the back burner over here, I'm putting a pot about 1/3 full of water. And going to bring it to a boil, and that is for the lids. When I get ready to use the lids, I'll drop them into the hot water for just a few minutes. So now I'm ready to start cooking my strawberries. Last night I cleaned and trimmed my strawberries and layered them in a pot or whatever you have that's big enough with sugar. And let them sit overnight in the refrigerator. So now I'm going to add this strawberry and sugar mixture that's got all the juices going here to my pot and bring it to a boil over high heat. Now keep in mind, this is preserves, strawberry preserves. It's not jam. With the jam, I would put the strawberries on with the fruit pectin And then after it comes to a boil, I'd add the sugar. But for preserves, I cut them up, added the sugar, and let them sit in the refrigerator overnight. So I have all of this nice juice going on here. Looks good already. Now the recipe I'm using and have always used for preserves is from the National Center for Home Food Preservation website. And the recipe is for strawberry preserves is 6 cups of strawberries and 4.5 cups of sugar per batch. And what this is a double batch. So it should result in about 10 jars of strawberry preserves. So I've got the burner on high, and I'm going to have to stand here and stir constantly. And when it starts to boil, I have to be sure it's not burning. You might have to reduce the heat just a little bit. This pot is a good conductor of heat, and I might have to reduce the heat just a little bit. And I'll cook it until my juice begins to thicken. It'll probably take around 15 minutes. So while that's coming to a boil, I'm going to wash my pot over here. The water in the pot on the back of the stove has started boiling. So I'm going to turn that burner down to low. These new lids that we have don't require being put into boiling water, but it does need to be in hot water. So I'll just keep that water hot until I'm ready to add my lids. Now it's going to take these strawberries a little time to come to a boil because they've been in the refrigerator. I'm going to put a lid on my boiling water bath pot so that it'll come to a boil more quickly. Everything's warming up now. As you can see, the juices are more clear. I like to make a couple of batches of preserves of different kinds. I usually make fig preserves every year. And strawberries or maybe even peach, because they're really good to serve over ice cream or strawberry shortcake. You can make a homemade pound cake and add these and some whipped topping, and you've got a fantastic dessert. Jam's a little too thick to do that with, but with the preserves, they'll be just the right texture that you need to use as a topping. We've got a nice boil going on. I'm taking the sterilized jars out. So I can sterilize the other batch. And I'm going to have to add a little more water and let it come back to a boil. I don't want to put the fresh jars down into boiling water anyway. So I'll let it all heat up together. Our strawberries are cooking nicely. You want to be sure you maintain that boil, but I had to turn the temperature down a little bit to keep it from boiling over. That is really foaming. I'm going to add just a small amount of butter to see if that'll help just a little bit. I don't like to add butter to my jam and other things that I make. But sometimes to keep the foaming down, it's necessary. I made a batch of jam, as I mentioned earlier this week, and one batch, well, I made 2 batches, and one batch has a lot of foam in it. You can see the big pockets of foam in this jar. Even though it doesn't hurt, it tastes just like the rest of the jam. It still doesn't look pretty, so I'd rather avoid that if I can. Still has a lot of foam. And it hasn't started to thicken yet. The strawberries appear to be cooking down a little bit more. See how they're no longer boiling to the top, but they come down into the bottom of the jam pot. But they're not thickening yet. So even though it's been almost 15 minutes, my timer's going to go off here shortly. I need to let them cook a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to set them for 10 more minutes, which is the length of time needed for the second batch of jars to sterilize. and I'll keep watching them closely. I'm going to start trying to scoop some of this foam off. It is getting a little thicker when it cools a little bit. Okay, that's our 10 minutes. Now I'm going to go ahead and jar these up. They still have to cook 10 more minutes in the boiling water bath, which is starting to come to a boil. So I'm going to go ahead and jar these up now. I'm going to turn the fire up under the water for the lids and go ahead and drop those in. As I started to say the other day, the older lids, you used to have to boil them for a certain length of time when you start to use them. But the newer lids, it's not necessary. So I just have them sitting in warm or hot water for just a short time before I use them. I'm going to move these over a little closer. And we need to leave at least a half-inch headspace. I usually put preserves up, some in the 1 cup size, the 8-ounce size, like this. And then I'll put another batch up in pints for people that use more at any one time. Well, I was wrong. We didn't get 10 jars. We got 12 jars. With enough left over for me to put on some ice cream later today. You don't have to boiling water bath these. They'll keep for up to 3 months in the refrigerator. But they have to either be boiling water bathed or stored in the refrigerator. That is full. My boiling water bath is full, so I'm going to put the lid back on it and bring it back to a boil in a hurry. And it'll boil for 10 minutes, the same length of time that it takes for jam to go through the boiling water bath. Jelly is only 5 minutes. When the water comes back up to a boil, then we'll start the timer. I'm going to set these back into the pot that had boiling water in it while they're waiting to go into the boiling water bath. The boiling water bath is back to a boil, so I'm going to set this for 10 minutes. And then our first batch will be done. My timer is going off, so the first batch is done. So I'm going to take this batch out of the boiling water bath, if I can get the first one, and set it over here in my prepared area. You don't want to set the jars right next to each other. Give them a little space to cool. And I'm going to put the other 4 jars in. I'm going to add a little bit more of this hot water. And when that comes back to a boil, then I'll set my timer again for another 10-minute processing. There's the alarm. Our second batch of strawberry preserves is ready. So I'm going to turn the burner off. Turn the timer off. And take this last batch, the last 4 jars out of the boiling water bath. We did get 12 jars. 8-ounce jars of strawberry preserves. And they look good. And after they've sat in this prepared area for 24 hours, I'll come back and wash the jars, check them to be sure they have a good seal, and label them and put them in my pantry. Thanks for stopping by.